I'm done.
See, Dr. B getting into it. His head start shaking like that. Rod, you were getting ready to go.
So
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the Black Men with Purpose podcast. For all of you joining us for the first time, it's a pleasure to have you with us. This is a safe space where we share our thoughts on a multitude of topics in hopes of helping Black males, young and not so young, overcome obstacles and challenges that can often be hindrances to happiness, productivity, and success. And we believe through our experiences, successes, and failures, we can have some conversations that might help other Black males in their respective journeys through this thing called life. Listen, they say that faith is for the soft. They say that believing in something bigger than you is weak and that prayer is passive. But we're here to let you know the truth. Faith ain't soft. It's bold, it's disciplined. It's the reason that we've gotten through wars, we've gotten through bad neighborhoods, trauma, and even the silence. So this episode is for all of you that have been told to toughen up when in reality, what we all need to do is to get our faith up. So from 4 Black men, military veterans, and today we're breaking down what real world shifting faith looks like. So lock in, lean in, and remember the strongest thing that you could possibly do is to believe. And so with all that being said, the topic for today's episode is faith ain't soft. And in this episode, it is our desire to redefine faith as bold, disciplined, and world-shifting for Black people young and old. And so we want to have conversations about our faith. We do know that faith without works is dead, but we have to be mindful that faith is also the substance, things that we hope for, and the evidence of things that we cannot yet see. And it's important in a moment like this when everything seems to be falling apart that we are based in a foundation of faith to move forward and to believe for better so that we can actually achieve better. So I've talked enough. As we get started, I want to talk to the fellas. A lot going on, not just broadly in the world, but in all of our personal lives. So I want to open up and ask the brothers, how you feeling today? And since we're talking about faith, let's talk about let's let our resident faith leader open up. Dr. Pastor B.
What's going on, fellas? How y'all feel? Y'all good?
Good.
This topic, faith, is so many layers to it. But when I think about faith, I think about how it impacts your identity. Because, you know, John, you mentioned earlier about having faith in something beyond you. And the moment that you have more faith in your own ability than what, and I'm a Christian, I believe in God, and I know people have other religions that they follow. I'm cool with that because at the end of the day, they actually have something that they believe in other than themselves. I think when you have people that have more faith in their own ability than a higher power or in God, I think they're destined to fail and they lose their identity. People try hard to have an identity outside of maybe from where they've come from. But faith allows you to have a strong identity and it gives you direction on where you are going because you're not just doing it on your own. I tell people, my church, I said that when me, myself, and I, when the three of y'all have a conversation, y'all will mess up the plan that God has for your life because the three of y'all done got together and messed it up. But the moment you have that faith identity, faith will give you identity of where you're going and who you belong to and the purpose that God has for your life. So that's just my thought on, that's just one layer of what I believe about faith. But I'll send it over to Brother Ray, let him chime in on that.
Wow. Okay, that's a tough one to follow, bruh. But I'm gonna do my best. Um, like John said, faith without works is dead. And God has been too good to me for me not to believe in Him. He has done too many things in my life for me not to believe in Him. The one thing that God has never done is let me down where man has. No, God, when I don't think God is talking to me, He's definitely talking to me. He's talking to me through other people. He's talking to me, whether it's just me being by myself and I'm just trying to figure out which way I'm going to go, which way am I going to lean, and He leads me in the right direction every single time. And yeah, faith is personal. I remember talking to somebody, a young lady years and years ago, and she said she couldn't believe in God because she couldn't see Him. And I'm like, well, that's exactly why you should believe in Him, because He is always there. He's just waiting for you to acknowledge Him. But let me take it a step further. When you walk into a room, do you feel like you're going to pass out, or you're going to collapse, or you're going to be poisoned or anything? She said, no. I said, can you see the oxygen in the room? She said, no. I said, so God's the same way. He's there. You just can't see Him. But you just have to acknowledge Him here in your heart. And that's the first step. He's just waiting on you to take a step towards Him, and he'll take two steps towards you. But yeah, faith is played a large role in my life, ever since I was a kid, and even until now, and there's some things going on in my life now where it's just like, Lord, I just need you to walk with me on this one, because this is something that's completely different. I haven't had to experience this in my life, and here it is. I'm 57 years old, and I'm experiencing something brand new that I never thought I would experience. And we'll get to that some other time. But that's it to begin. So I'll yield the floor. I don't know if Brother Rod or Brother John wants to go next. So whoever wants to jump in, y'all brothers have at it.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So this idea of faith, and as you were talking about the young lady that said that she couldn't see it, so she couldn't have faith. It immediately made me think about, how people live their lives and make decisions based on the fact that their check is supposed to be deposited on Friday and it's Wednesday, and they're hedging their bets, and spending that Friday money, and it's not here yet because they have faith that it's going to be deposited, So I think people, if they stop long enough, would recognize that, they do exhibit faith throughout their daily lives, just recognizing that that's what it is, or either they put more stock in a system or a process that man has built. They didn't see the man build it, but they know that their check gets deposited every other Friday. So like clockwork, I can believe in that because it happens, but all the things that they can't account for that happen, that is by virtue of God or whatever higher power they believe in or think about. makes a path to take place. So I do think that, faith is huge, and it is about being disciplined and believing in something that's bigger, larger than you, even things that you don't understand. That's the whole purpose of having faith, because our, mortal minds might not be able to process it, but it exists every single day. And I know, me personally, it's a huge part of my daily walk. So with that, I will pass it back to Brother John and look forward to having this conversation more in depth.
Absolutely. So how I'm feeling, I feel like the brothers then grabbed a hold of this topic and ran with it. And I love it. When I was researching and just trying to brainstorm and come up with some things that we could talk about, I felt like this was a really good place, because I felt like not only as a group did we have a structural and a foundational understanding of faith, but I think that we all have deep personal ties to faith and could really chip in from a personal aspect of how faith has impacted us. And one of the things that's exciting to me about faith, with it being an element that is unknown, I think, and this is absolutely my personal opinion, but I think sometimes we are so in search of the sure thing, and it is just really tough to be sure of stuff you don't know. And I often suggest that, do you think that we've gotten to the point that we know everything about ourselves and about our Creator? Like, do you think it can be contained in what little knowledge that we know? And so a big element of faith is being able to expand yourself and to explore and to learn. And to one of the mistakes we make is believing that when we're presented with new information, that if it doesn't marry up with our pre-existing belief sets, that we can't accept it, that we don't have the freedom to change our mind. But I think faith is a belief not only in something bigger than ourselves, but also in the expansion of ourselves and our knowledge and growing. Because once we stop growing, we're just preparing to die, in my opinion. And so I think it's exciting, to talk about the fact that faith it's not fragile, it's not weakness, but it's something that you forge and something that you get better at and something that you get more disciplined. And I love looking at it in the terms of discipline, because you don't become someone who's able to grow in your faith when you're lazy and undisciplined about it, about learning, about engaging, about practicing, about, all of the things that come with it. And, one of the things I like is we do acknowledge, like Brother Rod said, people that direct deposit on Friday, man, they world revolve around it. And there's so many other things we do. Like when we get out of bed in the morning, we don't test the ground to see if it'll hold us. We just step on it and walk with the assumption, or rather the faith, that it can contain us. And sometimes that application is apropos for our life, and looking forward to what is possible is to have faith, to believe in it. And in my opinion, faith is not a weakness, it's a strength. And so I think today we really, really want to frame this conversation to show how our faith is actually a discipline. It's a mindset and it's a power source. And having faith, all of us have been a part of, or we have a shared process where we started in one place, and through hard work, oftentimes being disappointed and dismayed and overlooked, but through faith we were able to get to a place. I don't know about y'all fellas, but the difference between how I began my military career and how I ended it, I couldn't have seen it from the beginning, how it ended up and who I became. But I just had faith that there was something bigger and better, and I moved towards it. And when in hindsight, you think, yeah, I'm so proud of myself, I'm glad I did that. But in the midst of the struggle, sometimes that faith was all I had when I was going through it, you know? And so, you know, I'm excited to have these conversations with these men of discipline, these men of powerful mindsets, and these men of faith about what faith is and what faith ain't, and to tell our personal story. So with that, I'm going to parlay it back to the faith leader in the sect. We're going to call him Dr. Reverend Bishop. But hey, man, let's debunk some myths, man. You know, we talked about what faith is, but man, talk to us about what faith ain't.
Well, one of the things you mentioned a couple of times is that faith requires discipline. And because faith requires discipline, that means it also influences the decisions that we make. And so when you don't allow the faith walk to influence your decisions, but you make those decisions out of your own merit, out of your own character, you bound to mess up. You bound to make some mistakes that you got to go back and either get it right. You got to go back to God and say, hey, you know what? If I would have just tapped into my faith and stayed there, I wouldn't have cussed that person out. If I would have tapped into my faith, you know, I wouldn't have been so emotional and quit that job just because somebody said something crazy to me. So with that, if we don't tap into our faith, we will end up making, and I don't want to say mistakes, we'll end up, for some of us, it is a mistake. So we'll make some mistakes. Some of us, there'll be some things that we will regret because we didn't use our faith. There'll be some things we got to go back and get right with people. So it's a lot of times our faith will require us just sit and be patient. And a lot of times we don't like that. And, you know, we talk about this next generation. A lot of people, I get people that want to come get a job. The first thing like, is it 6 figures? It might not be 6. You're just coming out of college, or you got 2 years experience and you want 6 figures right off the break. And so you don't want to spend the time building your faith. And to me, faith is like going to the gym. When you walk in, if you're going to the gym for the first time, you're probably not going to deadlift 600 pounds. It takes a minute to get there. You got to be consistent in your faith. You got to be consistent in going to the gym. You got to be consistent in your process. So back to what you're saying about discipline. Faith is discipline, and it influences decisions that you make each and every day. So if you don't have it, you need to get it.
Don't have it, go get you some. Listen, I'm kind of curious, you know, all season, man, Brother Rod has been really just hitting us with some faith. So I'm not trying to skip you, Ray, but I just want to hear from Brother Rod.
Yeah, you know, B makes a great point about how people set their expectations. You know, I need to make 6 figures today. And a lot of times the reason that they arrive at that place is because they've made decisions in the past that led them to needing to make a certain amount of money to cover all the bad decisions that they made, that they didn't pray through, right? They weren't leaning on faith. They were making decisions based on their own knowledge and information, you know, and you all know, you know, when we look at our lives and we look in the mirror, you know, we represent a culmination of all the choices we've made in our life leading up to that point. So no matter where you are in your life, that's what it boils down to. And so if you want a better life, you got to make better choices or better decisions. And if you want to make better decisions, a lot of times you have to lean on your faith and just believe, you know, that if God says that you need to be in this place at this time, you don't know where that's going to lead you to, right? He said all things, not some of the things, not every now and again. He said all things work together for good, you know, to those that love him and are called according to his purpose. And that's, kind of paraphrasing, but y'all get it. And I think we use it when it's convenient. We lean on it when it's convenient, when there's no other way, there's no other path, we'll fall down at that point and kneel and ask and beg and plead because we want whatever we're going through, whatever pain we might be feeling, we want that to stop and change, where really all you have to do is, through faith, turn it over to him in the first place, and then find a way to get to that center place and to be still and to recognize, because if you have faith, he's going to work it out according to his purpose, maybe not what you want it to look like, because what do we know, right? He sees what's going on, a mile down the road in front of us, 5 years down the road in front of us. And he's setting us up to be able to go along this journey. And so I would just tell you, being still and recognizing that, that we're really not in control. We're in control of whether or not we're obedient. We're in control of our habits. We're in control of the discipline that we exhibit to get to that place, and when you think about it, people look throughout the world and they see in faraway countries where they pray religiously, whether it's a certain season or certain time of day, how many times a day they pray. But those same people are also going through wars and famines. And so people look at that from their comfy lives in America sometimes and say, wow, if they're going through that and they're praying and exhibiting faith, then, I don't want any parts of that. Without recognizing that, everyone has to go along the path that's been laid out for them and be faithful to that. It's not about the race. It's not about what it looks like, how fast you run. It's ultimately about, yes, the journey, knowing that your destiny is laid out if you can just exhibit faith and be disciplined in how you go about living your life. And I would tell you that's a huge part of us being able to walk in our purpose. So, with that, I'll open it up for someone else to jump in, but I appreciate that opportunity there, Brother John.
Yeah. Wow. One thing I could say is, and I know we've all been through this walk. It's easy to have faith when things are going good. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, the only time that they run back to God is when things are going bad. And they're basically, Lord, help me get out of this. But like I said, it's always easier to have faith when things are going good. Because like you said, Rob, when you were talking about, go back to the check, as long as that check comes in on Friday, everything is good. But the moment that check don't come in, now all of a sudden we got a problem. And now, okay, now you're looking for help. Same thing with our cars. There's consequences to everything that we do. You can have a nice brand new car, whatever make and model it is, but that car is going to require maintenance. But every time you jump in it, you expect that car to start. But what all do you have to do? For me, faith is the maintenance of my life. Where a car is going to need gas, it's going to need regular oil changes, it's going to need air filters, it's going to need new tires, brakes, whatever. That car is going to need things to ensure that it runs. But if it doesn't start, now all of a sudden you got a problem. But again, so it's always easier to we have faith that that car is going to start and drive us where we need, we can drive it wherever we need to go. But then we have that problem, and then what do we do when when something goes wrong, when it doesn't happen the way it's supposed to happen? Um, and we have to answer for if we when we do things the wrong way, we have to answer for that. And again, the consequences. It brings me back to I don't know if I talked about it in one of our previous seasons, but a friend of mine that I've been friends with since 5 years old, I gave him a ride. I had just joined the Air Force. I was waiting. I was in the delayed enlistment program. I'm waiting to ship off the basic training, and I give this dude a ride to the east side of my town. And unbeknownst to me, he was carrying cocaine, and I ended up taking him to a crack house. And I see somebody smoking a crack pipe, and I start my car up, and I'm like, "Oh, I gotta go," And dude jumps back in my car, and I'm questioning him all the way back to his house. Do you have anything else on you? I'm driving extra careful, and for years, and I mean for over 30 years, I was angry at this brother. He had been to prison several times. I went on to have a great career. I met all of you brothers in my career. Life was good for me, and it just happened to be one of the times where I was back home with my mom, and my cousin was in the car, and my mom went to the store. And I normally would have gone in with her, and I said to her, you know what, I'm not gonna go in because it'd be my luck I run into so and so. My mom went through the door, and kid you not, within 30 seconds he comes out. And I heard God tap me on my head and tell me, get out and go say hi. And I was obedient. I listened. I spoke to him. Hadn't spoken to him like in over 30 years. Um, he told me what he was going through and what he had gone through in his life. He finally got himself together. It took for him to suffer through those consequences to fall back onto his belief in God. You know, and then I went to church the next day, and I swear, God had me stand up and during devotional and tell the story. And everybody is sitting there shaking their head, and I'm like, I wondered why God had me get out and speak to him, but then he answered that question for me, is because I was carrying that anger for over 30 years. And I had to forgive him because he already paid for the sins that he committed. And I was told by God, there's no way you can get into the kingdom if you don't forgive him for what you perceive he did, because I had you covered the entire time. That's why nothing happened to you. So again, he answered he answered for his mistakes. God had me covered, and I went on to have a great life and meet all you brothers, and have some wonderful friends that are in my life to this day. After since 1988. But I feel like I'm rambling again. So John, I'm gonna hand it back to you and let you take us where you think we need to go from here, bro.
Hey, Dr. B, do you want to hop back in there? I saw your
Oh yeah, I just was. Ray started that about how sometimes we will put our faith on the shelf, only want to activate it when problems are happening in our life, right? And so, and as we talk about faith, I don't want people to disregard the fact that we don't understand that life has realities. And sometimes people don't want to, well, put it like this. We understand that you have reality. Your reality may say you broke today, but your faith say you're not going to always be broke. Your reality may say today, I don't have a job, but your faith says I'm going to get you a better job. And so we have to allow our faith to embrace embrace our purpose, because a lot of time our reality will keep us from embracing who we are, or who we are in our God, or who we are in our faith walk. Because who we are as an individual and where we're going in our faith walk is two different things if you let it. But if you embrace your faith and embrace your purpose in your faith, you're gonna be exactly where God wants you to be. And so you got to ask yourself, do I want to be where I want to be, or do I want to be where God wants to be? Because you could be where you want to be, but you could be most miserable once you get there. I'm done.
See, Dr. B getting into it. His head start shaking like that. Rod, you were getting ready to go.
Yeah. So you bring up a good point, man, and I would tell you, brother, that was a personal struggle of mine for many years. Knowing that, and we've all gone through things, but when you sit and you reflect on some of the things you've been through, some of the people you grew up with that didn't make it out, that whose life was cut short for whatever reason, and then once you get to a better place in your mind, a better place, but further along in your journey, and you realize that, wow, that could have been me. And I don't know about you all, but for me, I would constantly ask God, why me? Right? Why did you allow me to be one who got out or who was able to change their circumstances or go a little further along in their journey? And so for a long time, I was in search of, I know it's got to be something here for me to do. What am I supposed to be doing? And I often just chalked it up of being in search of my purpose. And I struggled with that thing for years and years, trying to find satisfaction in a bunch of things that there was no satisfaction, And I would tell you, I had started a faith-based counseling session with a chaplain, Dr. Clute. Never forget him. And one day we were sitting down talking about it, and and he could tell that I was struggling with something. And I told him, I'm just trying to figure out, my purpose. I think that God has something that I need to be doing, something for me. Otherwise he wouldn't have allowed me to get out of, North Philadelphia. I wouldn't have been the one that, never got in trouble, or whatever the case might be. So I just wonder, what is it that I am supposed to be doing here? It's a greater purpose. And the revelation, and he just clearly and really quietly said to me, he's like, God already laid out your purpose. It's in his word. So if you get into his word, you will find your purpose. And it was the quietest word ever spoken to me, seemed like the simplest thing that was ever spoken to me. But when I started doing that, it's like the world opened up. How I processed things became clearer. And if you ever played basketball, it's like, you can look at a goal and sometimes it's so small, you don't even think the basketball will fit in there. But then other times it's like throwing that thing into the ocean. You can't miss, and that's kind of how my perspective and my mindset became as I looked at it from that perspective and realized that purpose is already laid out for us. We just have to get to the place where God would have us to get to, and he'll reveal to us and will guide us, direct us along our way. He'll order our steps, And so I just wanted to mention that because when you start thinking about, your purpose for being and recognizing that the satisfaction comes from things that are greater than just you, but they're things you have to do in order to get into that place, right? So I just wanted to mention that, and I'll turn it back over to you, Brother John.
Everybody throwing it back over to Brother John. Hey. No, but definitely, debunking and talking about the power of faith, but also faith is a discipline. Just talk about personal stories, and I'll talk about a moment where my faith looked like toughness and not tradition. And one of the things that I often like to acknowledge, and again, this is personal opinion, from things I've experienced, studied, immersed in, or just read or heard the testimonies of others. But when you look at whether it be the major faith traditions, we're talking primarily from the perspective of Christianity, but even if you want to look at Islam or Buddhism or look at indigenous faith practices, faith is often an invitation for you to meet God and for you to be active in realizing self and doing the work towards that point of how you are an impactful part of a collective. And even if your faith is just based on the faith of your collective or your community, faith is often better practiced when you're asking yourself, what can I do to contribute to my community, rather than asking the question, what can my community do for me? And when I think about a moment in my life where faith looked so much more like toughness and not a tradition was when my son's mother, my wife, Martika, passed away. And, it was there were so many things on the outside of the situation that were already tough just for the fact that they existed. But, I come into the situation, we're all praying, we're in the hospital, believing God for a miracle, full of faith, full of, there's a lot of positivity, and there's a lot of, we had hope that a good thing was going to happen. And it didn't work out how we hoped. And, to watch her take her final breath, and then to be in the midst of a situation where now my son, how do you navigate his life and how the way things are going to change? I wasn't in my own locality, so like I'm every day paying for rental cars and hotels, and I'm out here in the middle of I don't want to say a foreign city, but I'm out of town for like over a month, and I'm just like, before this happened, and you told me I would have had to drop that kind of money, I would have said it's no way, I ain't got it. But I just remember every day not knowing how I was going to make it, but just telling myself to keep putting one foot in front of the other. When it came to getting things together for her to get, military honors, how to get the funeral paid for, because nobody else had a way, and, making sure I got everything right for my son. And then even after all of that, making my way back to Illinois and figuring it out. And I just remember those days where I just kept saying, I'm not looking for anything to be fixed or 100% better. Can it just be a little bit more bearable the next day than it was the previous day? And I just remember it was just one step in front of the other. And then as everything came together, and as I started to kind of get my footing back and I was able to breathe again, and now even as I'm able to look back, I was able to realize that I had a community of people who loved God and who loved us, and they came together. And man, and I consider all of you part of my tribe and my village. Man, my village showed up, like not just, hey man, we love you and we're praying for you, but like sure enough showed up like with action. Their faith was not without works. It was alive and present, and it was there. It was the wisdom of friends that would just call and just say, hey man, tell me about this and this and that, and get me to talking about something, remembering and laughing and having these moments where I was able to make it. And, when I think about that, if we could share anything with anybody that's watching this, is like, don't feel like your faith is this crazy, mysterious things. It can show itself in, the way your tribe, your community, your family, your loved ones show up. It can show itself in being able to push yourself through things that you didn't think you had the ability to push through and survive. But you go beyond surviving it and you find, something about yourself that you didn't know was there, and I kind of intimated it a little bit early on in the broadcast, but I think about all of us, and Kevin included. All of us tell stories of, Rod talks about coming out of Philly and, not the glorious side of Philly, but the rough side of Philly, and Ray talks about, not knowing and trying to figure out and what was he going to do. And, we tease Byron incessantly about coming out of Indiana, you know what I'm saying? And, Kevin will tell you real quick about Brick City, you know what I mean? So, what we have become, what we have seen, what we've experienced, what we've learned, who we are today is so much more than what we could even imagine then. And faith was the guiding light to get us there. It was faith in our God. It was faith in our community and faith in ourselves, faith in the fact that we could go deep inside of ourselves and discover something that we didn't even know was there. Because I promise you, I had dreams coming up out of the east side of San Antonio, but some of the stuff I've experienced and have been blessed to have and do, I couldn't even dream this because I didn't know it was possible. So, I think about that as faith. So let's segue into faith as leadership and power, and how faith has empowered us not only to lead, but to serve our communities and to shift the culture. And I'm gonna start with Ray. How about you go first, brother?
You see, Byron was ready to hop in. He unmuted his mic and the whole nine. He was ready to go. But wow. Faith in leadership. Brother, it's what we do. We try to lead by example. I try to show people that God is real in my life by how I live my life. I'm not perfect. I'm never going to be perfect. I don't proclaim to be perfect. I put my pants on one leg at a time, just like everybody else does, but God has brought me a mighty long way. You're like you said, there's times I've been put in situations and I'm like, how did I get here? And how do I get out of it? Well, I just lean on my faith, and it's like, and then I remember that no matter what I'm going through, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be at that moment in time. So whether it's adversity, whether it's something good, whether it's something bad, whether I'm stuck in traffic and I'm like, man, I'm trying to get from point A to point B in a hurry. There's a reason why I'm sitting at this doggone traffic light or stuck in traffic somewhere, because I'm where I'm supposed to be at that point in time. God may be keeping me away from getting into a real bad accident, or I may get further down the road, see a bad accident has happened. Well, guess what? That could have been me. So I sit back and think about it like all the time. It's like, okay, I'm right where I'm supposed to be at that moment in time. Again, like I said, I try to lead by example, by, whether it's by prayer. I remember one time we were having I got called on the carpet. I think Byron was already gone from guard bureau at that point in time, but I got called on the carpet by this woman I can't stand, but that's neither here nor there. But she wanted me to pray over She wanted me to pray over the. It was a office potluck. She wanted me to pray over, it, and she just knew I was gonna. I'm gonna say botch it, And I just spoke from the heart, and then when I got finished, and I looked at her, her eyes were about that big around, and I said, "You didn't expect that, huh? You just thought I was a heathen." And I walked off. But yeah, man, I again, like all of us, we just try and live our purpose. Our purpose is to try and make a difference in somebody else's life, whether it's a young man, young woman, whomever. We just want to make a difference in somebody else's life. And no matter what, again, when I met the young man, another quick story, I met a kid at Home Depot, and he loaded some mulch up for me in my truck. And he had talked about joining the Air Force. I think I talked about him before, but he saw my Air Force retire sticker, and he just started talking to me about it. And I'm like, dude, anything you want to do, you can do. Well, I'd like to do this. Then go for it. And then 2 years later, I get a text message, or not a text, but he contacted me on Facebook. Angelo, he sent me a picture of himself in his ABUs and said, thanks to you encouraging me, I was able to join the Air Force, and I'm a cop like you encouraged me that I could be. And it wouldn't have happened if you hadn't have touched my life in the way that you did. And that, man, I'm telling you, that brought tears to my eyes, because I'm like, okay, I was right where I was supposed to be at that moment, and it was to be a blessing to him. So when we started this venture, it's like, if I can help one person by being transparent, if I can help one person, this is a success. So again, that's where I'm at on it, bro. So again, I appreciate you. I'll throw it to Byron, since he was ready to jump in the beginning. I'm gonna throw it to you, brother. It's all on you.
No, give it to Rod. Give it to Rod.
Oh man.
No, you know what, Faith, you talked about leadership, and Ray, when you was talking, I was thinking about how faith will allow you to walk in your purpose when nobody else shows up to your party. A lot of times in our faith walk, it's by ourselves. Your faith journey is you and God, or you and your moment. And it's easy to have faith when you got a lot of people patting you on the back, congratulating you, telling you how wonderful you are. But when you by yourself, when you want to quit, that's when your faith really kicks in and say, you know what? I got purpose for you. Nobody else sees it yet. Nobody else understands it, but I got purpose in you. And so that's what faith does. And John, when you talk about leaders, that's what faith leaders do. It's like, you got to do this by yourself a lot of times, because when you look in the Bible, I ain't trying to preach, but every time when you see where God was making moves with people in a faith walk, they was by themselves. Think when you look at Moses, when you look at Abraham, when you look at Noah, all these people had to do this miraculous faith walk, but guess what? They was by themselves. So that's what faith does. When you are by yourself, faith will help you establish where you're going, establish your steps, so you won't feel alone, and so you won't make you feel, so you won't feel like you're making a fool out of yourself. That's what faith does. All right, I'm done.
You say, I'm done. I'm done.
I'll give it over to Rod.
Well, I before I knew or started associating a term to it, I always thought about Jesus's walk, and the vernacular that we use today is servant leadership, and and how that just fit naturally into what I believed in, lifting up others, supporting others, trying to fully embrace and understand and exhibit the law of reciprocity, just believing that, if I'm cool with you, then you're gonna be cool with me. What other reason would you have not to be? Right. So to keep the chaos and sometimes violence and bad experiences out of your life, I just always believed in moving differently uh, because I saw the opposite side of that coin and what that brings with it. You know, the violence, the not so nice experiences with law enforcement or whatever the case might be. So when I think of, faith and leadership, I firmly believe that everyone has an opportunity to exhibit leadership, no matter what their situation is. And I often tell people, I have this term that I believe I coined called leadership matters. And everything is a leadership matter. Whether it's you getting up, being where you need to be at the time you need to be there, that's exhibiting leadership. Even when no one's watching you, you're doing the right things because you recognize how that disciplined approach is going to render, the results that you want, need, or expect in your life. You're exhibiting leadership in those things. And if you can embrace it as such, then you'll get to see the impact that it has on others when they watch how you move, right? So I think that we all have an opportunity to exhibit leadership every day of our lives as we go about those daily, routine, mundane things that we do. And then it takes me back to the Bible and believing that, people see you doing those things, but what they really see is a greater presence in your life. They see God in your life coming through by how you carry and conduct yourselves. And I think that that's part of our purpose, right? That people will see him through us, not us necessarily, because trust me, I'm nothing but a bag of mistakes and bad decisions and sin and wretchedness, had it not been for the fact that, he showed me a way to change and to change my circumstances and situation. So for me, faith is huge in how I lead and how I take advantage of those opportunities to lead, what that looks like, even when I'm not thinking about it as leadership. It is, and I encourage everyone to recognize that, whether setting an example for that young son of yours that's looking up to you, that hangs on your every word, that wants to do everything you do, how you do it, for that young girl that wants to dress up like her mommy, and walk around in heels in the house because that's what mommy does. We're always having an opportunity to impact others, even when we don't recognize it. And so I would just say, be mindful of the fact that people are watching, people are responding, to what they see and how they see you operate. And when you look at it, it can become a huge responsibility, but one that if we fully embrace it, it will start helping us understand, oh, this must be just part of your journey. Yes, this must be part of your purpose. Yes, because anytime that God is magnified and glorified by your actions, then yes, because that's what he wants, right? And that's what we should want. So that's how I try to even lead to let people know. And you know what? And I have been vilified for it, right? Because then it's about, I even had a leader say out loud in public in a professional setting that Mr. Hector cares too much about taking care of people, and he's not focused enough on the mission. Yeah, guilty all day, every day then, because the people are the ones that take care of the mission. What they really are saying, and what I saw it as, is that you don't necessarily agree with my approach or my methodology, but you can never say that you have a problem with the results, right? So talk about that if you're going to talk about me. And just had to recognize that, the devil is always busy and looking for ways to dissuade us from what we believe in, and what we hold near and dear to our heart, the things that God's poured into us, the work that we've done to learn those things. So I just encourage everyone to recognize that that leadership does matter, and everything that we do, there's a leadership matter component to it. So remain faithful and diligent in pursuing that thing that God has placed on your heart, no one else, right? And I guarantee you, everything else will take care of itself if you believe and if you have faith.
That other leader, I think what was going on was they were envious of the results you got and how you impacted people and how people would, and they was like, I don't get that same response, so I don't like it.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, we got a leadership seminar there. We do know it's my turn, but I want to be mindful of time because we want to make sure that we allow everybody to get where they need to go in a timely manner. But yeah, that faith is leadership and power, and how it empowers us to lead and to serve and to shift culture. And I know in my own leadership journey, when I was a young cat, getting out there, and I could get in front of an audience and say a thing or two, and I was feeling myself. I'll never forget a high school classmate and a dear friend of mine who's gone on. She passed on and has transitioned, but I'll never forget her saying, "John, you have charisma as a speaker, but I need to see how you lead." And I didn't know what that meant, because I was like, I can get in front of people. Ain't that leadership? Boy, was I wrong. But how faith took me on a journey to develop myself to be a leader that was worth following, that was worth leading something. And it took faith to fulfill what was inside of me, faith to know when to fight, faith to have the courage to figure it out, faith to forward the enterprise and the mission. The not believing in myself and having to discover, and having the wherewithal to decide that I want to discover. I had an opportunity to stay put, and it would have allowed me to be promoted to a position that, a lot of people don't make it to, but it wouldn't have challenged me. It wouldn't have developed the things. And I remember praying a specific prayer and, wanting to be in a space where I was a leader, where I was a mentor, where I was able to listen to the voices and not value my own voice over everybody else's, but to be a leader in that aspect of knowing what the best decision was based on, the conversations and the talent and the team that I put together. And so I went on that journey. And I remember talking with Kev before I put on chief, and we were just having some conversations, and he was like, "Man, one thing I'm gonna tell you is you high-headed like me, but you can't fight every fight." And man, I'm glad he told me that, because I went in there and I would have been trying to fight everybody and their mama, but I had to learn to be strategic and know which fights were worth fighting. And I remember several times being in a room with teammates and, they wanted to go back and forth about stuff. And I'd be like, look, I know whatever's being said might be wrong on a small level, but we're in a big picture. We're getting where we need to go, and we can fix that later, but let's just stay here and get where we need to go and not be arguing over the small stuff to make sure that we can bring the enterprise where it needs to go. But then, figuring it out, one of the things I learned, it used to be this saying that people would make, and I kind of felt like it was laziness at times, because they say, oh, that's a conversation between this level of leader and that level of leader. And one guy was telling me, yeah, I asked about a situation that I had been working on, and he told me, that was a leadership conversation. I said, no, it's not. I said, I can walk you right over here to the person that's responsible to that. That's not how that process works. There are people that are responsible for doing these things. And I always made sure that I got to know people and what their responsibilities were and what they did, and respected them and empowered them, instead of running in there like a wild bull and just trying to make people do stuff. There were people there that took pride in what they did, and they had responsibilities. And so I always wanted to make sure that I understood, that I asked kind questions. Am I just coming in too hot? What is the way that I should be asking this? What is the process for this to go? Not just coming in, oh, I'm cheap so-and-so and you better. Nobody wants to hear that. Even me, I ain't want to hear it, And but forwarding the enterprise, they wanted to do a lot of stuff, man. You would see a lot of leaders come in there and they want to make this initiative the thing that they're remembered by. But I was like, I don't care about all that, man. Nothing would make me happier than in about 5-10 years, people have forgot who I was, because now they're walking in their purpose and they're moving into these positions and doing things. I don't want no trophy or no picture on the wall or no something named after me. It was some clowns that we know that was in there trying to put their name on the recruit school awards.
Yeah.
I didn't want any of that. I wanted the enterprise to move forward healthy, and I wanted to be able to sleep at night knowing that I was a positive part of that. And it was faith. It was faith in my creator, my God. It was faith in my community. It was faith in myself. And it was faith in the people that I had the amazing opportunity to serve, that meant that my desire was to build a legacy, to defy the statistics that said that somebody that came from the neighborhood that I came from would not see their 21st birthday, and all of those things, believing in something bigger than myself and being proud to contribute to that and not submarine it with my ego. That was faith. So Dr. Bishop Reverend B is getting kind of antsy, man. Brother Ren, this was so good. I almost think we should do a part 2, but we'll brainstorm on the break and come up with some ideas. And y'all know the next time that we come across your screen, we're going to be coming with it. I want to thank each one of you brothers for sharing your stories, your testimonies, and talking about what we've been talking about, and leaning into the topic of faith. I want to close out this episode with a quote from Mary McLeod Bethune. And basically she says, without faith, nothing is possible. But with it, nothing is impossible. So with that thought, we out. See you next time.